Rain streaked the tall windows of Ethan Cole's penthouse office, the same way it had on the night his wife, Sophie, died 3 years ago. The sound used to soothe him, now it only echoed the hollow quiet inside his chest. He sat alone in the corner of the vast room that overlooked the city, a man with everything but peace. The empire he'd built still ran flawlessly, the employees still spoke his name with reverence, yet every success only reminded him that Sophie was not here to share it. Her laughter had once filled these walls, now, only silence did. He hadn't touched her belongings since the funeral. Her books still lined the shelves in their old home, her perfume lingered faintly in the air whenever he dared to open the bedroom door. But tonight, something inside him shifted. Maybe it was the loneliness of another anniversary, or the way the rain whispered her name through the glass, but he found himself drawn to the shelf where her favorite novels rested. Ethan's hand brushed over the spines until his fingers stopped on The Secret Garden, the same worn copy Sophie used to read during sleepless nights. He remembered teasing her once, "Why do you keep reading that children's book?" And her answer had been soft, yet wise, "Because every broken heart deserves a little magic." A tired smile flickered across his face as he pulled the book out. The pages smelled faintly of her perfume. He sat by the fireplace, the only light in the room flickering across his tired features, and opened the book. A small sound, a faint flutter. Something slipped out from between the pages and landed on the floor. It was an envelope. Ethan froze. The paper was yellowed and fragile, his wife's neat handwriting curling across the front, "For Ethan, when you're ready." His breath caught in his throat. For a long moment, he just stared, afraid that opening it would shatter the delicate illusion that Sophie still existed somewhere in the world. Finally, with shaking hands, he slid his finger beneath the flap and unfolded the letter. Her handwriting filled the page, elegant but trembling in places. "Greater than my love, if you've found this, it means you finally opened our book. I knew you would, someday. Grief can bury us, Ethan, but it can't hold us forever." His eyes burned, the words blurring as he read on. "Greater than you need to live again. Promise me that. There's someone you must find, Clara Evans. She helped me when I was lost, long before the end. Help her the way she helped me. When you do, you'll understand what I couldn't say in time." At the bottom was an address, faintly smudged by time or tears. Ethan's pulse quickened. He read the name again, Clara Evans. The name meant nothing to him, yet Sophie had written it with the same care she used when signing "I love you." He leaned back, the letter trembling between his fingers. 1,000 questions tore through his mind. Who was this woman? What could she have meant to Sophie? And why had his wife wanted him to find her? Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the reflection of a man he barely recognized, older, heavier with regret, eyes that once burned with ambition now dulled by sorrow. For years he had lived inside his grief like a cage, afraid to move forward, afraid to forget. But now, staring at Sophie's words, he felt something stir, not comfort, not peace, but a quiet urgency. A message that life wasn't finished with him yet. He folded the letter carefully, pressing it to his chest. "Clara Evans," he whispered, testing the name aloud, as if speaking it might summon her. The rain outside thickened into a downpour, but Ethan barely noticed. He rose from the chair, slipped the letter into his coat pocket, and walked toward the door. For the first time in years, he wasn't running from the past, he was following it. Before leaving, he glanced once more at Sophie's photograph on the mantel. Her smile seemed to hold secrets even now. "I'll find her," he murmured. "Whatever you wanted me to see, I'll find it." The elevator doors closed behind him with a soft chime, carrying him down from the world of marble and grief into the unknown. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and Ethan Cole, the man who had everything but love, stepped into the rain, the letter warm against his heart. He didn't know that somewhere miles away, a single mother named Clara Evans was closing her cafe for the night, humming softly to her daughter, unaware that destiny had already written their names on the same page of the same book. The next morning, sunlight broke through the storm clouds, casting golden rays over the quiet city. Ethan Cole's black car pulled to a stop outside a small corner cafe, Clara's Place. The building looked worn but warm. The windows fogged slightly from the heat inside, the smell of freshly baked bread drifting through the door each time it opened. A small bell above the entrance chimed as Ethan stepped in, his tailored suit immediately out of place among the soft chatter and clinking of mugs. He didn't belong here, and yet, something about the cozy, imperfect charm of the cafe reminded him of Sophie. She had loved places like this, where people smiled without reason and laughter filled the air. Ethan scanned the room. Behind the counter stood a young woman with tired eyes and a kind smile. Her chestnut hair was tied in a messy bun, a few loose strands framing her face. She was serving an elderly couple when her eyes briefly met his, and something, though he couldn't explain what, tugged at his chest. When she turned back to work, he noticed the name stitched on her apron, Clara. He froze. The same name written in Sophie's letter. Taking a deep breath, he approached the counter. His voice, though deep and steady, carried a hesitation it rarely had. "Excuse me, are you Clara Evans?" The woman blinked, then nodded politely. "Yes, sir. How can I help you?" Her tone was gentle but cautious, the way people spoke to strangers they couldn't quite read. I believe you knew someone named Sophie Cole," he said quietly. "My wife." Her hand froze halfway to the cash register. The color drained slightly from her face. "Sophie," she whispered. He nodded. "She passed away 3 years ago. But she left a letter for me, and your name was in it." For a long moment, the cafe's sounds faded into silence. Clara's eyes softened, and a wave of emotion crossed her face, sadness, nostalgia, and something else he couldn't name. "She was my friend," Clara said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. "She used to come here sometimes. Before she got sick." Ethan's heart tightened. "She never told me." Clara gave a faint, bittersweet smile. "She didn't want you to worry. She said you already carried too much." The words hit him like a blow. Sophie had always protected him, even when she was the one dying. "Do you have time to talk?" he asked gently. "Please." Clara hesitated, glancing toward the corner where a little girl sat coloring quietly at a table. "Give me a few minutes," she said softly. When she returned, she led him to a quiet booth by the window. Outside, the world was waking up. Inside, it felt as if time had stopped. Clara folded her hands on the table, her gaze steady but distant. "Sophie was special," she began. "She used to sit right here, always with her journal and a cup of tea. She said this cafe reminded her of her college days, when you two were just starting out." Ethan's throat tightened. "She came here, after the diagnosis." Clara nodded. "Sometimes she cried, sometimes." She smiled. "She told me you made her happiest when you didn't even know it. And before Clara paused, swallowing hard, "she made me promise to help others the way she helped me." Ethan frowned gently. "How did she help you?" Clara smiled, a tear escaping down her cheek. "I was a single mother, struggling to keep this cafe open. My husband left before my daughter was born. One day Sophie came in, saw me crying in the back, and offered to help with no judgment. She paid for my rent for 3 months. Said it wasn't charity, it was a loan of kindness." Ethan closed his eyes, the weight of Sophie's quiet compassion pressing on his chest. "That sounds like her," he murmured. "Yes," Clara said softly. "She said you would find me someday. That maybe, we both needed healing." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her this time. The exhaustion in her face couldn't hide the strength beneath. The same gentle warmth Sophie once had lived quietly in this woman's smile. "I think she wanted us to remind each other that kindness doesn't end," Clara whispered. "It continues, in the people left behind." Ethan's gaze shifted to the little girl at the corner table. She was humming softly to herself, swinging her legs as she colored a picture of a garden full of flowers. "She's your daughter?" he asked. Clara nodded. "Lily. She's the reason I never gave up." He smiled faintly, the first true smile in years. Sophie would have liked her. Clara's eyes shimmered with tears. "She did. She met Lily once. Gave her a small silver bracelet. Lily still wears it every day." Ethan turned to look again. Sure enough, a tiny silver bracelet glimmered on the little girl's wrist, engraved with delicate initials, SC. He couldn't speak. For the first time in 3 years, the grief in his chest shifted, not disappearing, but transforming. Sophie wasn't gone. She had simply left him a trail to follow, one that led to this cafe, this woman, and this child who carried her light forward. Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds, illuminating the little cafe as if the heavens themselves were smiling. Ethan whispered to himself, "Thank you, Sophie." And for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. Weeks passed since Ethan's visit to the little cafe, yet he found himself returning more often than he planned. At first, it was curiosity. Then it became comfort. Eventually, it was something deeper, something he didn't dare name. Each morning, the same golden light spilled through the cafe windows, and Clara would greet him with a soft smile and a steaming cup of black coffee. It was the same order Sophie used to make for him every morning before work. He noticed how Clara added a hint of cinnamon, something Sophie never did, yet somehow, it felt right. Like a new beginning rather than a replacement. Lily, Clara's daughter, had grown fond of him quickly. She would run to his table, clutching her crayons and drawings. "Mr. Ethan, look, I made a flower garden like Mommy's cafe," she'd chirp, proudly showing him her colorful sketches. Ethan would smile. A real one, the kind he thought he'd lost forever with Sophie's passing. He never thought he'd laugh again. But around that little girl, laughter came easily. Around Clara, silence didn't feel empty anymore. One quiet afternoon, as rain tapped softly on the cafe windows, Clara sat across from Ethan after closing. They shared tea and stories, hers filled with struggle and survival, his heavy with loss and guilt. The air between them carried a fragile tenderness, like two broken souls learning how to breathe again. "Do you ever think people meet for a reason?" Clara asked suddenly, her voice barely above the patter of rain. Ethan looked up, thoughtful. "I used to. Sophie always said that life doesn't give us coincidences, only second chances disguised as them." Clara smiled faintly. Then maybe she was right. Maybe this, she gestured between them, was her plan all along. He didn't answer right away. He only looked at her, really looked, and saw in her eyes the same light that had once lived in Sophie's, not identical, but kindred. Not a reflection, but a continuation. That night, when Ethan returned home, he took the old book from his bedside table, Sophie's journal. He had avoided opening it again, afraid of what more it might reveal. But something in Clara's words urged him on. As he flipped through the pages, a folded piece of stationery slipped out, yellowed and fragile. His heart skipped as he unfolded it and recognized Sophie's handwriting. "Greater than, Ethan, my love. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, but I hope your heart isn't. Please don't let my absence become your prison. You once told me that your life began when you met me. But, my love, your life shouldn't end when mine does. I've met someone kind, her name is Clara. She reminds me of who I used to be before I met you, lost, afraid, and trying to be strong for a little girl who deserves the world. Promise me you'll find her. Promise me you'll see what I saw, that love doesn't die, it changes shape." Ethan sat in silence, tears welling in his eyes as he clutched the letter. The room felt warmer, softer, like Sophie was there, smiling through the echoes of her words. The next morning, he returned to the cafe earlier than usual. Clara was wiping down the counter, humming softly. When she saw him, she smiled in surprise. "You're early today," he smiled faintly, holding out the letter. "I found this last night." Her eyes widened. She took the letter, scanning the familiar handwriting. When she reached the end, her hand trembled. She mentioned me." He nodded. "She said you reminded her of herself. That I should find you, that maybe we could both heal together." For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy, but not painful. Then Clara stepped forward, her voice breaking slightly. "She was right. You've helped me remember how to hope again." Ethan's chest ached, not with sorrow this time, but with gratitude. "And you've helped me remember how to live again." At that moment, Lily came running out from the kitchen, waving her tiny hands. "Mommy, Mr. Ethan, come see, I made pancakes shaped like hearts." They both laughed, turning to the little girl who was grinning proudly, flour dusting her cheeks. Ethan knelt beside her, smiling. "You know, Lily, I think your mom makes the best pancakes in the world." Lily giggled and slipped her small hand into his. "Then you have to stay for breakfast, Mr. Ethan." He hesitated for only a second, then squeezed her hand gently. "I'd like that very much." As the morning light poured in through the windows, it wrapped around them like a promise. Clara watched the two of them, the man once broken by grief, the child born out of love and loss, and felt something bloom quietly inside her chest. Sophie's plan had worked. Love had found its way back to life, not as a replacement but as renewal. Outside, the rain had stopped. A faint rainbow arched over the horizon, reflected in the cafe's window like a whisper from the heavens, a sign that some goodbyes aren't endings at all, but gentle beginnings in disguise.